Good afternoon, all, and welcome to another episode of EducAsian Career Development Edition. My name is Michelle Lay, and I'm the Marketing and Outreach Manager for ACDC, which is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that aims to educate, connect, and empower the Asian community here in Nevada. We have a multitude of services to help the community, including health enrollment, food and rental assistance, citizenship, as well as different youth programs. We've recently launched our career services program where we provide free resume and cover letters reviews, as well as interview preparation. So if you're about to graduate, it's really important that you polish up your interview skills, as well as have a strong resume, which are super important elements to have before you enter the workforce. So for more information about our programs or about our organization, you can visit our website at acdcnv.org or contact us at info@acdcnv.org. And you can also call us at that number down below. And so on the topic of career services, November is actually Career Development Month. And before we can develop one's career, you actually have to get a job and get started. And job hunting is already such a strenuous process on its own. And anyone who has searched for a job knows that it's practically a full-time job for itself, searching for jobs, looking for jobs, applying, interviewing. It's really stressful. So if you're graduating now and you're about to enter the workforce, you're entering a very unique environment that have various challenging circumstances that exist now. So it's important and really valuable to talk about how you can get a job, especially during this bizarre time, with someone who has actually gone through the process. So that's why I'm very excited to announce and welcome our guest for today, a friend who I've been following the journey of for, and I'm just literally really looking forward to learning from too. He recently finished his master's, went through the job hunt, as well as secured a whole job during this crazy COVID era. So I'm happy to welcome, let me go here, Martin Beck. Hi, Martin. Thank you so much for being here today. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah. So actually, I'm from Vegas myself, born and raised in Vegas. I got my bachelor's in information systems at UNLV. So class of 2015 there. Never mind, 2019. What am I saying? Can't even do it right. And then I got my master's a year later. So just finished up this past May in information technology management at the University of Texas at Austin. And then more recently, I've been doing some volunteer work for full stack development for Rillamarks. It's kind of this creative platform I'm trying to create. And then I just got a job offer 2-3 weeks ago with Best Buy as a cloud engineer, and I'll be doing remote work for them starting next week, actually. So yeah.
So firstly, congratulations on all of your accomplishments. I know how much of a relief you must feel to no longer be unemployed and not knowing what's next. And also all of the volunteer work you sounds great. So we'll get to that a little bit later. But on the topic of being stressed out, I know you especially have experienced that during this time. Yeah. And I know that because I was looking through your social media. So I want to bring up this one tweet that you have for several reasons. Number one, it's just also a really relatable tweet. We all know that universal feeling of despair and that just overall tiredness of applying for a ton of jobs and either getting back rejections or worse, just not hearing anything back at all, which, by the way, for everyone listening, know that that's a very normal thing to experience when you're first entering the workforce. If you've never extensively applied for jobs, that's a normal process to this. But I also really just wanted to point out the date on this tweet. You posted this all the way back in June, and I imagine it started before this. So I'm curious, can you talk a little bit more about the timeline of when you graduated, when you started job hunting?
Yeah, so basically, I kind of started job hunting right before graduation. So I graduated back in May 20th, about that. But I started definitely job hunting in May. So I had gone through a couple rounds of interviews with a couple of different companies over the couple of months, but it wasn't really, and they didn't work out obviously because I didn't end up working for them. So I didn't. And so obviously you've seen I've been unemployed for 3-4 months now, and then I finally ended up finding a job with Best Buy and all that. But it's been a brutal experience, right? Because the hardest part, I think, is kind of getting up every week and still deciding to apply to I did 10 to 20 applications per week, reaching out to my colleagues about, hey, if there's any openings in their companies, give me a referral, and kind of just going through all the ropes. I think that was the hardest part, right? Constantly still trying, because I would get weekly rejections, like all those applications I'm sending out from the weeks and months beforehand. They're slowly trickling in saying, hey, we're going with someone else, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of the timeline. It took me 3 or 4 months of just straight, interviewing and like applying for companies before I actually got the actual like offer, so it's not easy. I remember when I was talking with one of my mentors during my program, he told me he was unemployed for 6 months before he got another job. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you're like a senior VP at this kind of company. Like, you're going 6 months of unemployment, and like that's crazy. And I was hoping I would not even get anything close to that. So I'm happy I didn't hit 6 months, but 4 months is basically the same thing, and it's brutal. But I'm lucky in that I was able to kind of stay with my parents and kind of like, because I moved back in with my parents and just kind of started applying. So that's the only good thing about coronavirus, being able to apply from home to anywhere in the U.S. And that's definitely made it easier in certain aspects, but harder in that now I'm competing against people that are recently fired because being laid off, and then now you have experienced hires in the field trying to find work, but also just companies kind of having to deal with coronavirus and deciding how are they going to hire people. Are they going to hire people? It's been interesting, but yeah, it's been a brutal. I hate to use the word brutal, but it's been brutal a couple months.
No, definitely. I've also never heard the words, the only good thing about coronavirus used. So glad you got a positive light to that. But applying for jobs is like, at least now you can have all these opportunities elsewhere. And one thing you really mentioned or hammered on is about how difficult it is to just go every day. How did you keep your motivation up getting that all the time?
Man. I had gone to sleep stressed all the time. I can't even tell you. Like, I was just like, how am I going to, start paying off my bills? My student loan, is going to start being required to be paid in like 6 months. Like, how am I going to manage all this? And it's not easy. It requires like just pushing through with friends, talking with the friends about it. But it's just getting up every morning saying, I know this is hard. I know I got rejected 10 times this week, but I got to send another application. And I know that's like so cliche to say, oh, just get up and do it. But there's no other way to process it. You just have to literally get up, will yourself up, and then go do it. Because if I didn't do that, I mean, granted, I did, a lot of my interviews were from like colleagues and referrals, but I still had to get up and talk, reach out to them, and spend a lot of time preparing for all these interviews. Just staying motivated is the hardest part about job recruiting. I don't know. Everyone's got their own ways of getting motivated, right? So I can't really speak too much to that. I don't know.
No, whatever. Right. I mean, like paying off your student loans, being in debt, that's already sort of something to be motivated for. Paying that pressure
on your back, and you're like, I got to do it. I got to do it, or I'm done.
No, for sure. And so you're mentioning a lot about your colleagues and your friends. So how did you find, like, what are all the opportunities? How are you able to find all the opportunities in this environment? How were you able to get those interviews? Can you talk a little bit more about that experience?
I think definitely the biggest thing, and I know people mention it all the time, but really it is important to be very in touch with your colleagues, professors even. And then also for me, we had like career advisors for like my master's program. Being in touch with these people constantly, kind of keeping them updated about what's going on, talking with them, just, making sure that they know what's going on, right? Because if I didn't tell my colleagues, oh, I'm still looking for work, they probably would not have even mentioned, oh, hey, maybe I know this person that can do a referral or whatever. But also for me, maybe because I like love talking with my friends and like I'm a little more extroverted, I would say, it was really easy to kind of connect with a lot of my colleagues in my program. So a lot of them can, I think, easily refer me because they know usually they've worked with me or at least kind of know my work ethic, so they can speak to me when they're referring me. But also surprisingly, professors. I did have one professor in particular. I was like blockchain class, and like me and him just like really connected well, and like I talked with him a lot. And I was talking with him like about a month or two back, and I was telling him about my whole process. Like, hey, I'm still applying for companies and stuff. It's it's hard out here. And he's like, hey, good thing you mentioned that to me, because now I can reach out to some people that I know, like previous students of mine, that maybe I can find you a referral. So surprisingly, professors can even give you referrals. Obviously, the closer you are with them, the more likely that's going to happen. But at least the people I've come in touch with, I think because they're more collaborative, but usually they're more open to giving you kind of some kind of referrals and stuff. But yeah, just connecting with people.
Yeah, no, definitely. Especially because if you don't ask for help, you're never going to get it, because no one knows. Like, you're probably fine unless you say that you need something. So I guess now it seems like networking is the big thing here. And now that we don't have those roundtables or those typical events that we go to network with people, how are you managing to do that? If you didn't have your friends, say, how would you leverage that?
Surprisingly, LinkedIn helped. I'm gonna be honest. So I did do a couple rounds of interviews with Amazon, and when I was looking for a position, I looked for some people that had the same exact title. I reached out to them, connected with them, and this doesn't happen often, but it was like 2 out of like 6 or 7 people were like willing to talk with me more, and even out of those people that are willing to kind of even refer me, because I was talking with some guys that were like architects for like the solutions architects for Amazon. I was talking with them, like talking about my whole process. Oh, do you know more about this kind of position? Can you give me some advice? Kind of going back and forth, even telling about my own background. And only one of them I just directly asked, but the first guy I talked to, he actually was like, hey, if you want a referral, let me know. I'd be open to do that. And I was just like, wow, that's amazing. I didn't even ask. But after finding out that people are very open, even when you just met them, the second guy asked, when I was going back and forth with him about jobs and stuff, I asked him like, hey, would you be open to be giving me a referral? And he was like, yeah. So like these 2 different people that I just had met that week, because I was reaching out and connecting with them, they were open to giving me a referral, right? Granted, my resume obviously had to kind of make a fit and everything, but you'd be surprised how open people are to kind of pass on referrals to people. I was telling Michelle earlier, I had 2 job offers before I decided on Best Buy. But this other job, I decided, hey, I understand it's a rough process trying to get a job out here. I reached out to my own network. I'm like, hey, you guys know anyone who's still looking for a job right now? Here's a job that's totally open, and I would totally love to give a referral for that. And I had a couple people reach out, but I think because everyone gets it, right? It's hard getting into technology. It's hard kind of just starting your career. So if I can help someone else out, I'd be more than happy to.
Definitely. So you heard him. If you are currently looking for a job in the technology field, Martin has abundance of connections now that he can refer you to. But also just know that it's a lot of people out there naturally just do want to help you. The most important thing that you have to do is just ask and make sure you do it kindly too, professionally, all of that. I need a job. But so I also am a little curious. You mentioned this a little bit earlier. How many overall applications do you think you went through? How many interviews did you go through? Because it sounds like it was quite the process.
So I literally kept an Excel sheet, I think, just so I can keep track of everything. It came down to 150 applications that I like directly applied for. In my past year, I got about 13 interviews. 10 of them though were through referrals, whether it's from my colleagues, from my program, from the professor, one of those things, or like employee relations we had through the college. Only 3 of them were interviews that I got just from the application. So you can hear, like, look at the numbers, right? 3 applications out of 150 actually went through and got me a job. Well, at least an interview, right? So it's brutal. I have a master's degree, and like it was still brutal. Granted, I guess I'm technically entry level because I don't have like a job. I didn't have a job yet before I started my master's, but it's still brutal out there. 3 out of 150, right? Do the numbers.
It really is. And I think something that you hear a lot is that for people who are in the technology field, that like that's a growing field and that people think it's probably something that's easy to get into because it's such a growing market. And you're like, oh, like if you major in this, you're guaranteed to get a job. But like the reality is a lot of those times, those entry level jobs require you to have a bunch of qualifications, like 5 years of experience, a master's degree. And so I guess for those who don't have all of that experience, what do you recommend? How do they strengthen them to be a viable candidate?
Yeah, so I read Medium articles a lot, and I hate to say this because it's very cliche. I see it all the time when people talk about like, oh, like how to get jobs and stuff, but side projects, right? I had a couple myself. I would write about them too, actually. But side projects were the best way, I would say, to even kind of get some attention, because that's the thing when you're going through these interviews. And so imagine 2 candidates, right? One can't, like, they're just as good maybe as development or whatever they're doing, but one of them can literally speak to their experience because they've done developing on like their own side project, but the other one has only done a couple, class projects, and that's about it. You're probably going to end up choosing the side project one because this one, they have kind of already demonstrated that they can kind of do the work already because they've done that. They've done the development. They've set up a simple app. Maybe they wrote about it. Maybe they, worked with a couple of cloud services, deploying online, whatever. But the thing is, that shows that the skills that you say you have, you do because you're actually, utilizing them in your own side project. Whereas, when you're only coming back from like school experience, you almost have to like prove that you can do what you can do, right? What you say you can do. So side projects was kind of my go-to.
So how did you find the projects?
Oh man, they're it So it's really a lot of like just walking around. I'm like, like what would be a cool app, or like what if I could try this, or honestly, even on Medium, I keep saying Medium because like I write for them, but also like I read a lot of the articles on Medium all the time. It's amazing. But there are articles online that you can look. Hey, look, here's top 10, projects that you should try out for, data science, development, whatever. There's gonna be a side project for whatever you need to do, right? But sometimes it's even just I think the better projects come from when you're walking around thinking, hey, I want to try this out, and then going out there and trying it out, because you're going to obviously be way more involved, way more inspired to try something out. It might not work, but my thing is I've definitely learned with technology, like it's one thing to kind of theorize an idea, but once you kind of get into the weeds, start trying it out, you really realize how much work goes into it and what's required to kind of accomplish what's needed. And being able to speak to that experience during your job interview, I think is vital, because you can tell them your thought process, how you're kind of developing and going through all these things logically. And they like seeing that kind of stuff because they're like, all right, cool, I can see this person, because they understand, like, the skills are there, but the hardest part is having someone who can logically go through the process and solve these problems. So you showing that you can do that process because you've already done it with your side projects is amazing, as opposed to, oh, this person's gone through a couple of projects and that's cool, right?
No, showing
Yeah.
that you can do it is definitely more important. And I guess I'm not very familiar, but for technical jobs like yours, is there a knowledge test? I've heard there's like different things that you have to demonstrate before you interview, or no?
Yeah, it depends on the company and exactly what type of role. I think more software development, like engineers, they definitely have way more technical tests than I did. But even my roles, a lot of them tend to be more like just kind of knowledge checks. Like, hey, do you know about like this technology? How would you utilize it? And kind of whether pros and cons of using it. Just kind of checking your stuff. But mostly, I only have one actual coding interview, and I prepare for that just doing like HackerRank, like code examples and stuff. But a lot of them just more of, at least the interviews I went through, a lot of them were just talking with me like, hey, what kind of experience do you have? What projects did you work on? What did you do? Some behavioral questions, and that's about it. I did have, I think, two companies reach out to me with like coding projects and like a presentation.
Did you end up doing those?
Yes. Well, not the coding project one, because I just ended up not going forward with that company, but the presentations, yes. So it was just like preparing like slides, and I think one of them it was for like MongoDB. It was like for a solutions architect. It was kind of like designing a project, like an application or whatever, and then kind of presenting it to them. Yeah.
It's awesome. So I'm not very familiar with the field, but if anyone out there that is listening who is trying to go into information technology management, technology, feel free to comment your questions for Martin. I'm sure he's very happy to answer them. But before we do that, I'll just get back to this. Is that, do you think that there was any one particular thing, whether it's a skill that you have or something that you said, something on your resume that made you successful in being able to not only get an interview, but like get as far as you did and get a job?
This is probably a weird answer. I know when you sent me this question, I was like, what would be the one thing? And weirdly enough, it's being open to opportunities, which sounds weird, but it's because, I feel like especially in technology, a lot of people get caught up on all these like big companies, like, oh, I only want to work for Google, Amazon, et cetera, et cetera. But, you'd be surprised how many companies do the sort of work you need to do. And honestly, unless the company's absolutely terrible, a lot of companies are great, and you'll probably be fine working for them. So I think that's being open. Because imagine if I've been too prideful, I'm like, oh, I'm only going for these top companies, and I'm restricting myself to very, specific roles and, company types. I wouldn't be working for Best Buy. You know what I mean? Like a year ago, I didn't think I'd be working like for a cloud engineer for Best Buy. What? How? I didn't even think Best Buy had like a cloud, team. But you'd be surprised. A lot of these companies need a variety of functions, like services and functions that they need to do, that kind of are needed by your whatever role you want to do, right? So I think being open to opportunities, because that allows me to say, whatever. I know I like this type of work, so let's see what companies kind of need this work, and then just kind of going out there and finding out what's out there. So being open. I know it's a weird answer, but it was true, right?
No, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, because there's so many companies that like are geared towards a specific sector, but within that sector, you need everyone to be in like various departments in order to make that company run. So there's very like similar things, components to all of those companies. So being open is extremely important. And so I guess, so if you, okay, I again want to go back to the grad school thing, since you did finish, and this is more like an unspoken thing, but for people who, so it's unspoken thing that for those who just graduated from undergrad and are going straight to grad school, it's kind of because they don't know what to do next in their career. Is that something, like, not to be accusatory, but is that something that you resonated with, or why is it that you decided to pursue grad school? And like, did you gain anything
I
from
see
it?
what you're saying. I will say one thing. You're right. People do use grad school as a weird fallback, which I think is a weird plan because that's so expensive and so stressful. I would not choose it as a fallback because I hate to call people out, but there was a guy like that in my program where he said, this was like my backup plan, and I was just like that took me back because this was my first plan. Like I was like, I'm going to grad school. I'm going to do this because of these reasons. For me, that's true. Honestly, Michelle, that's true. That's true. For me, it wasn't true because in my undergrad, like I liked it. We kind of touched on a couple of technologies like programming with Java and like some database stuff, but I just felt like it was too surface level for me to succeed in technology the way that I wanted to. So that's why I decided to go for more technical masters, and that's what kind of brought me to my program at UT. So no, you're not accusatory. It's definitely a thing that happens. Trust me.
And so you did gain something from it, and it was completely worth it for you.
Oh yes, I gained a lot from my. It's funny. I'm actually writing another Medium article about like, oh, I got my master's. Was it worth it? So I'm actually yes. I've spent the time thinking on whether or not it was worth it, and it was. But it's also, it kind of depends on your background and what was your goal going into your program in the first place, right? Because like I know for me and a colleague of mine, she had a more technical undergrad. So when she went into the program, like it was cool that some of the technologies we used, but she had already done a lot of the stuff, so it wasn't too new to her. So she felt like she was kind of re-rinsing the same things, but yeah, she was paying like what $48,000 in tuition to kind of learn the same things. For me though, all of it was like a lot of it was very new to me. So it was definitely well worth it, right? So it really depends on your background. What are your goals though with your programs? Because me and her are the same program, but we got two very different things out of it. I learned a lot though. I'll definitely speak to that.
No,
Yes.
grad school is quite the investment. So I'm glad you got all that
Yes.
you could out of it. Because I know, especially during this quarantine period, I don't know what it is about people that are our age, but we always kind of sort of rely or flock to school because I guess it's something that's just so familiar. Like, oh, I don't know what to do next. Let's go back to school.
Well, I mean, I get it, right? Because think about like at least for a lot of Americans, we've been in school for 18 years plus another 4. So imagine like your whole livelihood kind of being based around this very structured schooling academia process. I get it. Once you finish, it's kind of like, what's next? So I can see why someone would go into a master's. I'm just giving advice where if you think you're doing that, don't. It's going to be a very expensive investment that you might not even like, right? Because you don't want to be $48,000, $60,000 in debt, how much ever it ends up being, and then end up leaving with your job or leaving with whatever job that you don't even like that much, right? My thing is you got to make sure it's very intentional. You want to go in, get whatever skill set you want, and then come out with a job that you at least are assured that you're going to enjoy. Otherwise, it's a very expensive just play around, right?
Yes, very wise.
I wish I had that kind of money to say, oh, let me just try it out. No, I don't.
If only. Okay, we actually have a question from someone that you may know. So, were you active on LinkedIn before your 150 company job search? And then what advice do you have for people who want to use LinkedIn effectively?
Yes, kind of. So I started writing some like technical articles for Medium back in a year ago, actually. So back in December, I wrote my like first article, then I wrote another one in January. So I've written like 3 or 4 articles by the time summer rolled around. And then I'm posting about that on LinkedIn. I'm also like reaching out to job recruiters and like reaching out to people that are in roles that I'm interested in. But it was also being active on LinkedIn's it's a weird mixed bag, right? Because I feel like a lot of people want to do it hoping to get a job, but also you got to genuinely want to make that kind of content, right? When I'm making my articles and stuff, I'm not thinking, oh, I'm going to get a job out of this. It's because like it's something I'm interested in. I'm building something I think is cool. And I just want to talk about it. I might happen to get a job out of it. So I think, I get the idea of using Medium to get a job, but also it might feel too forced, but also like it takes time. Like I wish I had a viral post, in the first time I posted something. It takes time. But I'm also using LinkedIn though to like apply to companies. I'm not sure if I answered that question. You said
no, very cool. How?
Yeah, I'm not gonna say that I use LinkedIn effectively though, because I feel like I wasn't the best LinkedIn. I'm not the prime LinkedIn example, to be honest. I was more active than I think some of my colleagues were, but I'm not gonna say I'm the best guy on LinkedIn. I will say that for sure.
Let's talk about what you are good at, which is Medium. Is that something you sort of just send articles to and they post it no matter your?
Yeah. So I like kind of write some articles depending on like whatever I want to write about, and then I send it to like a publication. And then they end up approving it or like denying it for like edits and stuff. But I just started doing that recently. It's fun. I personally like writing though. So it's not like I'm not forcing myself to write. It's just like I'm doing these projects and I just happen to be talking about them. Or like I have like like some advice things like the one I'm writing on right now is a master's one. I'm like I get it. Like I'm imagining myself like a year ago looking for a master's. What kind of advice would I want to hear about getting a master's? And especially now, right, with coronavirus and virtual education, traditional education now is kind of almost weird. Like some people, I don't know if I would go for education anymore, honestly, considering how much the classroom has changed. But Medium, yeah, it's been great. I love writing for them. I get $70 a month now from my articles,
Wow.
so that's cool.
Okay, another side gig you have.
Side flex.
Right.
But no. But I lucked out because one of my articles it was about like scraping tweets from Twitter, and I guess a lot of people on Google just always look that up every month. So I had a lot of people just constantly looking up for it. But that's why I also like writing tutorial articles so that's how I started writing articles. Actually, I was doing like some data scraping for like my master's project for my master's program, and then I was looking up for like some tutorials online, and a lot of them were just like lacking. And I decided, hey, if I'm going to already spend enough time like learning how to use this myself, and I understood at the first time when I first started using it, it was really hard. I might as well make an article that kind of makes it a lot simpler for people. And I did, and I guess a lot of people wanted to keep watching it. It's at like 90,000 views, so I'm happy. I'm happy that it actually got some traction. But that's how I started, just noticing that, hey, I want to write something to help people.
That's good. Marcel is encouraging you to get that bread.
That bread.
But no, also if you do have the skill, share your knowledge with others, and then also it helps solidify like the information that you already know because you continue to learn it and make sure that like how they tell you to write down your notes instead of typing it, things like that. But okay, we'll move on. I do have just a couple more questions for you. So I guess number one is if you can make sure people take away one thing from this broadcast from all of your lessons, everything that you've learned, it doesn't have to just be one thing, but what are your main lessons from this whole journey?
Connect with people. Because as you saw, like my numbers, at least in regards to like applications and stuff, a lot of them came from referrals. I mean, the job I ended up taking was from a referral. So for me, it wasn't too hard. I love people. I love, talking with friends and stuff, but like connecting with people gets you so much farther in a career than you would think it does. Because I think everyone's so focused on like what technical skills do I need to get to kind of do well in this field. But like, as long as you're okay, don't get me wrong, you need to have the skills, but the better you are with connecting with people, the better you can like kind of move forward, get a job, hop companies if you don't end up liking the company you're at. You'd be surprised how far they get. Because like the cool thing from Medium was when I started writing my articles, people start reaching out to me about questions, and I'll try to help them out and everything. And it's just kind of fun doing that. One of the from one of my articles, I ended up getting like a two contract jobs from them because one guy was like, "Hey, can you help me scrape some data from Twitter?" I'm like, "Yeah, fine, I can totally do that." And then another an old professor of mine reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, I saw you were writing about this," and then we talked again, and he was like, "Hey, I need some I'm doing this research project. You want to hop on? Get paid for it?" And I'm like, "Of course." But connecting with people is definitely one of them, and no matter what way you cut it, especially during coronavirus, recruiting is brutal. I'm sorry, but it is, right? Because you're competing against other amazing and bright people, also just as good as you are. So it's not going to be easy. And just because you get turned down once or twice, don't be sad about it. I remember when I first got my first two like actual rejections from like interviews, I was so let down. But if I let that like taking over my life and like not applied anymore, I wouldn't be where I am now. A lot less stressed and a lot more calm. Because I have a job now, you just got to keep trying. So I think it's, definitely those two things. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know.
No, you're right. Especially the connections thing. And like, it's like the very stereotypical thing that people say is not what you know, it's who you know. And it's like repeated over and over for a reason. It's because truly people trust your character. And so if you refer yourself to someone, to an employer, they're like, okay, I trust this person. I'm probably going to interview this person as opposed to this piece of paper I don't really know.
Even in technology, that still stands true. You would think, oh, like you're doing all these engineering things, like that matters more. But like, no, like knowing one person refer me allows me to skip through all the application process to get a straight interview with a hiring manager. That'll take you way farther than just like applying, right? Yeah.
Definitely. And so I guess since I started off with a more negative tweet, I'll show the more positive ones toward the end. So waiting on a job out there, offer in 2 other interviews, and your unemployment status has officially been revoked. So congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. When I first got that offer from Best Buy, I was like, let's go. Because it's nice, right? I'm like texting all my friends, I'm like, thank God, you know, like when the manager was like, you know, we're gonna go forward with you, and I was like, wow, like, okay, I needed this.
That's awesome. It's like really just trust the process. Like as tough and as brutal as it is during the process, like eventually you're going to have to land somewhere. And that's an important thing to remember. And so since we're winding down, just one last question, not really related to tech or anything, but since it's Thanksgiving week, what are you grateful for? Name something, or bonus points if it's something that's not so typical, like friends, family, we all love them, but you know.
You know, I think the niceness of people, right? Like, even like I mentioned those people earlier where I just reached out to them. The one guy, I had one virtual call with him, not even like an in-person, a virtual call with him. And he was so open to like saying, hey, do you want a referral? And I was just like, yes, thank you so much. And like, that's why that's so important to me. And that's why when I like did take my offer and I had another one sitting on the table, you know, I decided to pass it on because I get it. Like, life's brutal. Like, why make it any harder for people? Why can't we just all be nice and try to help each other out? I just feel like everyone, like, I don't know, people are just so caught up with competing about everything. And it pays so much more to be nice. And that's why, at least when people reach out to me about like any question, I try my best to always answer it. So I think the niceness of people, how nice people can be, I think that's what I'm thankful for. Because my colleague got me the job, you know, the managers and all of them were nice. People are amazing. People are amazing when they can be, right? Don't get me wrong. I have a strong distaste for HR people now, but it's been a brutal process. That's why.
That's another story for another day. But all right, thank you so much. And I definitely agree with you with the niceness of people. Thank you for volunteering your time. I know you're getting ready to start your job next week.
Yes, next week.
Oh, next week. So it's starting soon, but taking the time to talk and share your knowledge and your expertise. I'm really happy to be here and sharing that, as well as everyone who's watching this today. So that is going to wrap things up. Thank you so much. For Martin, if anyone wants to reach out to you to ask questions about field, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I do have my LinkedIn, Martin Beck. It's like / Mart Beck, I believe. I can't really remember. Or just my email. It's martin.beck@utexas.edu. Either one's fine. I will respond either way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Again, everyone, thank you for being here today. We actually have an education series coming up on Wednesday where we will be talking about open enrollment as well as our emergency services program. So be sure to tune into that. We have a lot of different programs to help the community out right now. But for the meantime, have a great rest of your week. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving as well as a safe Thanksgiving, and have a good day. Bye, everyone.
All right, later.
Bye.